Hey everybody, and welcome back. It's once again time for some Not Your Mother's Goose, where we try to bring a little joy into your life, only slightly at the expense of Grumpy, Dopey, and the Little Red Hen. I'm Topher Goggin, and coming up today, well, have you ever seen a Jeopardy episode where they do the potpourri category, which pretty much just feels like the writers saying, hey, here's some clues that we really like, but thinking up a category for them, that feels like a lot of work. Looking at today's show, I think that's where we are. We are all over the map, but it's fun. We're starting on Gilligan's Island. We've got Star Wars shoutouts in the news and in a Broadway Before and After. We'll check on a variety of fairy tale pies. We'll do the Hokey Pokey. And then we're going to set sail with Sinbad on a fairy tale typo that goes straight down the drain. Let's just say there's something in here for everybody. Sound like fun? In that case, grab your life jacket and let's dial up Gilligan. Gilligan's Island. Just sit right back and you'll hear a tale of a man in a bucket hat. This is Gilligan. And apparently that's Willie Gilligan if you dig deep enough. Seems like we could have shortened that to Willigan, but anyway. Gilligan is the first mate on a mighty sailing vessel known as the Minnow. And based on what we see of Gilligan's sailing and survival skills, we sense that Minnow HR didn't have a real deep budget when it came to employee screening. Being first mate on the Minnow appears to require the same level of acumen as playing second chair triangle in an elementary school band. Gilligan and the Minnow's skipper take 5 guests out for a 3-hour tropical tour one day, and quite a crew of guests it is. We've basically got Bill Nye the Science Guy, not quite Anne Margaret, a cousin of Dorothy from The Wizard of Oz, and Mr. and Mrs. Magoo. Clearly a group that would all end up booking the same incompetent oceanic charter. As you know, they head out for the voyage, the weather starts getting rough, and the next thing they know, they've crashed on a deserted island with polar bears and a smoke monster. Thank goodness they all fit on the door to get to safety, unlike folks in certain other programming. For the next 3 seasons, they make a half-assed effort to get off the island, and about a 3/4-assed effort to build interesting devices to make island life more pleasant. Normally here I would crack a joke where I'd make up a list of random items that the professor supposedly manufactured for island life, ending with something absurdly unnecessary like a Xerox machine. Unfortunately, it's a bit hard to top the preposterousness of the things the professor actually built, which included, and I'm serious here, a roulette wheel, a bomb powered by nitroglycerin, which of course is in ready supply, a bicycle-powered telegraph, a sewing machine, an always useful Geiger counter, and of course a lie detector. Now, if only he could have invested his efforts in inventing that Flex Seal stuff, he could have sprayed it on a screen door, put that on the hole in the Minnow, and they all would have sailed away. Most of your Gilligan's Island episodes followed a similar plot progression. The group has a plan to get off the island, the plan looks promising, and Gilligan screws it up. And then they have the immunity challenge and vote someone out at tribal council. Okay, maybe not that, but would anyone who's actually watched Gilligan be at all surprised if Jeff Probst walked out on the island during a show? I mean, who didn't stop by Gilligan's Island at some point, and for every imaginable purpose other than offering a ride? They had appearances from a rock band, a dictator, and Zsa Zsa Gabor. Basically, this place gets more visitors than the DMV. So you ask, though, what happened at the end of all of this? How did they get off the island and avoid getting stuck guest starring on an episode of Alf? Well, they didn't. They were just plugging along, one episode after Gilligan got some tooth fillings made out of explosives when CBS just canceled the show. And then they did have to guest star on Alf. And then Alf got canceled right when the spaceship from Melmac showed up. But that's another story. Just remember the next time you're belly aching about the Lost finale, nobody ever gets off the island. I think it's safe to say that nobody wants to hear the real news right now. I know I'm in that boat. So let's take a break from all that and try some news that only happens once upon a time. Old MacDonald sets new high score on Farmville. Hagrid projected as second-round NFL pick after strong performance at Combine. And in the latest in magical destination planning, Disney previews new immersive resort. Buoyed by the success of its new Star Wars-themed hotel, Walt Disney World is continuing the trend, launching a new resort allowing guests to transport themselves into the world of The Little Mermaid. If guests enjoyed being harassed by stormtroopers all day, we figured they might also like holding their breath for their whole vacation, said Disney Vice Chair of Resort Imagineering Don Sittenleft. Located in the Seven Seas Lagoon, the new under-the-sea resort will be Disney's first literally immersive hotel, as guests dive in for an underwater experience like no other. After arriving via transport on submarines from the old 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea ride, guests will take a deep breath and swim to their clamshell accommodations for a stay like no other. Swim with Ariel, hang with Flounder, and try to escape Sebastian to refill your searing lungs on the surface as the Little Mermaid comes to life during your 2-night excursion. While guests were generally pleased during a preview weekend last month, some patrons complained that the $4,500 price tag probably should have included a scuba tank rather than just a complimentary dingle hopper to do their hair. Concerns also surfaced that 4 travelers made deals with Ursula, 3 of whom are now weeds growing in the resort's garden. Regardless, Disney is thrilled with the early reviews and hopes to take the immersive stay concept even further. This includes the $8,000 Mowgli Motel, where you just live in the jungle at Animal Kingdom while trying not to get eaten by a tiger, and a $10,000 Sleeping Beauty resort where you sleep for a week without leaving your room. There's no need to pause while you book your stay. Check out this week's sponsor, as Not Your Mother's Goose is getting into the NFT craze.
Hey, you folks, Rumpelstiltskin here. You know, I'm just like you, always looking for ways to make big bucks in a hurry. And that's why today I'm diversifying from the straw spinning business and jumping on the bandwagon selling NFTs. Now, I'm not talking about those non-fungible tokens where you spend $10,000 for a photo of Jim Belushi washing his car that you could have downloaded for free. No, I'm selling new fairy tales. If the Brothers Grimm did you wrong and made you look like a moron in your fairy tale or nursery rhyme, just call the Rump Man and I'll rewrite your story today. No longer will you be the doofus troll that passes up goat after goat until Rambo comes along and kicks the snot out of you. When you buy a Rumpelstiltskin NFT, you'll go from 0 to hero faster than you can say, "Maybe don't ask a hungry fox for a ride across the river, bonehead." Dim-witted characters from Little Red Riding Hood to the Hare have turned their lives around with my NFTs. Call today for a sample, and I'll send you a free copy of The Emperor's Clothes Are Already Just Fine, free of charge. Once you order, I'll ship your NFT in unmarked packaging so your neighbors won't even know you got one. It's double your money back if I make you look worse, but let's be honest, that's hardly possible. Call me, Rumpelstiltskin, and order your personal NFT today.
Welcome back to Not Your Mother's Goose, which sometimes feels like one giant NFT. I also think Brian Weifrich agrees to keep doing these ads just to see what oddball voice might be needed next. Before we make him play Goldilocks, let's get back to the news. Little Red perplexed when oil change worker says, "Pop the hood." Sandman arrested for indecent exposure, claims it was just a goodnight moon. And while we're on the subject of police investigations, Rapunzel busted by Mathnet. The sheen on Rapunzel's long locks, or supposedly long locks, I guess, has worn off as the formerly esteemed princess was outed as a liar and charged with 4 counts of fraud yesterday following an investigation by the elite police agency, Mathnet. Armed with nothing but a TI-85 calculator and some graph paper, Agent Kate Monday and her partner George, frankly, meticulously calculated the theoretical growth rate and tensile strength required for a set of braids capable of hauling a 185-pound prince to the top of a 55-story tower. They concluded from this that Rapunzel had better be about 340 years old. They also noted that supporting the weight of those tresses should give Rapunzel neck muscles more suited to pulling a fire engine with her teeth in the World's Strongest Man competition than slipping into an evening gown. Upon seeing the blue-jacketed Mathnet agents approaching with a warrant, Rapunzel shockingly jettisoned the fraudulent hair out the window before realizing that flight wasn't really an option. After agents discovered a Kirkland signature tag inside the lengthy extensions, Rapunzel confessed that she'd ordered the hair during a bulk wig sale at Costco. Let's talk about pies. If you're living in the world of fairy tales, there's a lot of disgusting foods you probably just want to avoid. Miss Muffet's Curds and Whey, Goldilocks with the porridge, some versions of Rapunzel involve radishes. But there's another that might not come to mind at first, and that's pie. Stick with me here. We start with little Jack Horner, who sits in the corner with his supposed Christmas pie, then proceeds to stick in his thumb and yank out a plum before giving himself a gold star for doing so. Okay, pal, find the hand sanitizer, please. But it turns out that is just the beginning, and we can actually kick it up a notch, Emerald style, if we switch over to Sing a Song of Sixpence. Sing a Song of Sixpence, a pocket full of rye, 4 blackbirds baked in a pie. Well, that sounds tasty. And I guess it's more of a half-baked pie, since when the pie was opened, the birds began to sing. So this restaurant is even more due for a visit from the health inspector than little Jack Horner. According to the internet, there is actually an old Italian cookbook that includes a recipe for pie with live birds inside, so do keep that in mind the next time they call out the Italian guy on an Iron Chef rerun. Now, with Sing a Song of Sixpence, you may vaguely remember that there's some more verses, and if you don't, I looked them up for you. The king was in his counting house, counting out his money. The queen was in the parlor, sipping bread and honey. Okay, that's nice. But then we get this. The maid was in the garden, hanging out the clothes, when down came a blackbird and pecked off her nose. Well, now that's lovely. Talk about pandering to your audience. Nothing like a pecked-off nose to hook the kids. As far as I'm concerned, that's the 16th century equivalent to putting a flatulent aardvark in your movie. Now, for what it's worth, there is one more verse where the nose gets put back on, pin the tail on the donkey style, I suppose. I guess that makes it better. If you really want weirdness, though, what you need to do is take both of these pie rhymes, put them into what my dad calls the Googler, and see what you get. Take this with a grain of salt, but some people claim that Little Jack Horner is a real story of great political intrigue, so they had to totally disguise his real name, which is actually Thomas Horner. Very clever. Stay tuned for the sequel about a mystery governor of California named Dave Schwarzenegger. Hopefully these writers aren't in charge of the witness protection program. Anyway, according to the True Hollywood Story, both of these rhymes are actually about the same thing. Bear with me here. It's a weird scheme where it was actually delicious property deeds being baked in pies. I told you it was getting a ways out here. The plum might also be a reference to lead, and the whole thing involved Jack Horner screwing over his boss, the Abbot of Glastonbury, who was himself trying to bribe Henry VIII, of course. Also, we've got Anne Boleyn in here. She may be the one getting her nose pecked off. Are you confused yet? Well, fear not, though, because Thomas/Jack Horner's descendants claim the whole thing is a lie. At this point, I'm going to do what my old math teachers used to do when they really didn't want to finish off a question involving the quadratic formula or something, and say that the rest is left as a simple exercise for the student to finish themselves. So enjoy the rest of your pie. Star Wars, the Phantom Menace of the opera. Let's face it, Star Wars is pretty much everywhere. So while normally our before and after-ish segments revolve around movies, today we're going to take Star Wars to the one place it hasn't been, which is Broadway. Put on your fanciest theater clothes, we're headed to see the Phantom Menace of the opera. With music by Andrew Lloyd Webber and lyrics and dialogue from George Lucas, hopefully not from the Attack of the Clones period, the Phantom Menace of the opera is the world's first 3-act musical, where Act 2 is performed first, and everyone just complains about Acts 1 and 3. As the story begins, Jabba the Hutt has captured Princess Leia and joins forces with the Emperor to demand that she sing the lead in the musical number of the Death Star's annual talent show. Distraught over the development, and deeply displeased with the work from Jabba's costume department, Leia roams the Death Star in despair. One day, while exploring the garbage chute, she encounters a mysterious new friend, a brooding, cape-wearing mystery man in a mask who also breathes with the strange sound of scuba equipment. To Leia's relief, the Phantom reveals that while he is a pilot and Sith Lord by day, his secret love is the stage. He's written his own musical, Obi-Wan Triumphant, and wants Leia to sing it for her grand debut for the Emperor. Opening night arrives, but as Leia takes the stage, she realizes that Grand Moff Tarkin has been replaced in the male lead role by her mystery Phantom. As he finishes the show's big number, the music of the Knights of Ren, she boldly removes his mask, revealing the hideous cue ball face of her father. He then promptly dies. Sorry about that. The audience is saddened by the loss, well, except for that one guy that Darth puts in the Force chokehold, But of course, the show must go on. Unfortunately for everyone involved, as the production reaches its climax, a falling chandelier crashes down and lands in a thermal exhaust port, setting off a chain reaction and detonating the entire theater and the Death Star with it. It's a bit of a rough ending, but just remember that all of Shakespeare's greatest works were tragedies. The Hokey Pokey. I try not to get too serious here on the show, but every once in a while we do have to ask the big questions in life. You know, what's it all about? And sometimes the answers are staring us right in the face, screaming right in our ears. Because the Hokey Pokey, as many people have recognized on road signs, that's what it's all about. Now, if you've been listening to the last few episodes, you know that I recently got tasked with participating in a local charity dance show. Seeing as how not too many people fled the auditorium in tears after our dance, I figure that means I'm highly qualified to start discussing such items here on the program. First of all, if you're not familiar with the Hokey Pokey, that means you haven't gotten dragged to a wedding in the last 50 years or so, and therefore I am jealous of you. But it's pretty simple. About an hour and a half into the reception, usually sometime after the Cupid Shuffle but before Sweet Caroline, the DJ is going to throw on a song written for 6-year-olds, and the next thing you know, you're getting dragged into a circle to start bebopping away. The good news is that this dance is not exactly difficult. If you found the Macarena to be just a little too much choreography, the Hokey Pokey could be for you. Unless you're the person that really struggles with left and right on the GPS, and then you're going to need to wait for that whole self verse. The way it works is we take a sequential tour of body parts, putting them in, changing our mind and putting them out, realizing that we should have left them in the first place, and then shaking them all about. If you're at, say, a thoracic surgery convention, just hope they don't use an extra verse involving, let's say, gallbladders. Once we're done, though, with all of the inputting and outputting, it's time to do the Hokey Pokey, which I would best describe as jazz hands meeting a touchdown signal, all with the general level of balance normally associated with a toddler in dire need of a visit to the restroom. Add to that 360 degrees of rotation as you turn yourself around, and that's what it's all about. On a separate note, is there any better argument for getting rid of the old rule that you're not supposed to end sentences with prepositions than the Hokey Pokey? Think about this. Every single line of this song ends with in, out, around, about. If our DJ is also an English teacher, they're going to be telling us, in you put your left hand, all about you shake it. I don't think we're doing that. Finally, it is worth keeping in mind that just about every song in history can be interpreted as a drug reference, even if it's not, and I'm not just talking about Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds. If you thought this principle couldn't possibly extend to the Hokey Pokey, think again, because the New Zealand version is actually known as the Hokey Tokey, and apparently in the UK, it's the Hokey Cokey. I just hope there isn't a verse where you put your nose in. To wrap up today's show, we're going to return to the world of fairy tale typos. For folks that weren't with us, a few shows back we had a contest where listeners could submit their best fairy tale typographical errors, new stories they could make up by just changing a letter or two in a title. We got a bunch of fun suggestions, and tonight we're going to tackle another one. I will tell you right now that if you're not really a fan of immature potty humor, you should probably just call it good for this episode and come back next time. While I can't take responsibility for the title, otherwise this is definitely the most juvenile thing I have ever written, at least in the last week or so. Of course you remember the voyages of Sinbad the Sailor, not to be confused with Sinbad the stand-up comedian. This Sinbad went to sea many times, it would seem, so we've got the first voyage, the second voyage, and so forth. Now, I don't know the details of any of these voyages, I doubt you do either, but I do know that our Sinbad was more prone to shipwrecks than Gilligan and the crew we talked about earlier. And all we need is an unfortunate autocorrect, and then the third voyage of Sinbad turns into the Turd Voyage of Sinbad, and now we've got another story to tell. Let's see what we get. The Turd Voyage begins with Sinbad setting sail, but not on the 7 seas. He sets sail on the 7 sewers, trading in the ship the Chimera for the SS Clorox and casting off from the Porcelain Beach. Just moments later, there's a sudden sound, and a violent whirlpool develops. Sinbad is caught, sucked into oblivion, and the Clorox is destroyed in the violent oxbow turn around the trap. Shipwrecked as usual, Sinbad runs aground in a septic field, but he's not the first to arrive. In fact, a love triangle develops, with Sinbad being the subject of the affections of both the princess and the pea, check your spelling, and of course the typo tempest, Little Bo Poop. In fact, it's only with the arrival of one of our previous show characters, Rip Van Tinkle, that the stalemate is broken when Rip tells the princess she's his number one and whisks her away. But before Sinbad can finish his own business, we realize that Little Bo Poop has lost her scoop, and she deserts Sinbad to go find some plastic bags to clean up after the sheep. Sinbad is left high and dry in the septic field, doomed to a solitary existence castaway style. At least until the Pied Wiper of Hamelin shows up. I told you I'm basically a 12-year-old. I think now that the Turd Voyage has come to a close, that's a pretty strong sign that it's time to wrap up this episode of Not Your Mother's Goose. I do hope you'll be back next time, though, as we've got something very special planned. It's our second Rapunzel's Jukebox Behind the Music episode, where we'll highlight all of our best parody songs from the show. Our singer and kazoo master, Andrew Mitchell, will be back with us to talk about his favorites and how he takes the lyrics and turns them into what you hear on the program. We're also going to have a very special announcement that you won't want to miss. Our first Behind the Music special remains one of the most popular episodes we've ever done. I'm hoping this one will be just as fun. Until then, don't forget to check out the Not Your Mother's Goose Facebook page and notyourmothersgoose.com for more fairy tale fun. I'm Topher Goggin and the Goose is Loose. I'll talk to you with Andrew on the next episode of Not Your Mother's Goose.